Coming at you from New Jersey, the capital of misery, and the place where metal forgot to die.
This is the Here Lies Metal 2 Notes New Music Review. I am Samantha.
And I am Maledictus. We shall be your overlords for today and all of eternity. Welcome! What's this?
Today, we have a band called Red Eyes with their album Chama Satânica.
What does that mean?
You know what? I don't know. I think it's maybe like a Satan's Flame, perhaps.
Oh, okay, that makes sense.
It's in Portuguese. Apologies to Portugal and all the Portuguese diaspora people. But they are from Aveiro, Portugal. Formed 2006. 2006.
It's been around for a while.
Been around for a long time. They feature Saber on bass and vocals, Blarau on drums, and Helio on guitars.
That might be Sabre.
I also want to note that all these three members have been here since 2006. But this is, as you can imagine, their seventh full-length album.
Oh, wow.
And also to note, they've been releasing an album every year since 2020, and I have missed every one except for this one.
Oh.
It came out January 3rd, 2023, independently on Bandcamp, where it is 100% free.
So if you keep at it, you'll eventually make it. That's just a perfect example. These guys have been at it since 2006.
Have they made it?
For here in the Here Lies Metal podcast, they have. So that's all that's important.
We found it. Okay.
Yeah. All right. So let's get underway with this voyage. And now it's time for the Here Lies Metal exclusive 5-point bidirectional classification scale, including the categories genre loyalty, listenability, production style, musical complexity, and just plain fun. Please note that either end of these scales means goods or bads. Let's get underway.
All right. The first scale, the scale of genre, true to nonconformist. I'm giving this a 2.5. On the side of true, but kind of getting out there to almost not quite true. The archives call them black thrash, and there is definitely black thrash in here. That's correct. But there are also strong doses of heavy metal and speed metal, and all very true 80s versions of those genres. Think like Show No Mercy Slayer, Venom with the necro riffs, but there's also Judas Priest on the heavy metal side. But overall, I would definitely say like Bathory. And like Bathory, like their style will alternate between kind of first wave black metal and Viking metal, but instead of Viking metal, replace it with this very like Iberian peninsula flavored heavy metal.
Red Eyes has this sound that goes back to the good old days of new wave British heavy metal. Speed, proto thrash sound, where it all kind of came from. So accurately, I think, one would think, like, if you listen to this, if you just pick this album, you would think it might actually be from that era. And some albums are able to do that, And I'm hearing in their sound, I'm hearing a mix of a lot of the original metal influencers. Like, for example, on the second track, it's a little bit Black Sabbath-y in a way. They have a lot of Merciful Fate going on there. Maiden, Priest, early Slayer, like you said, Show No Mercy. And, I even hear a little bit of Kill 'Em All in there, dare I say. However, imagine if this album existed in 1982. It would obviously, if you had this album in your hand in 1982, I think it would make the rest of those bands look kind of lame if this actually existed back then. What do you think?
I mean, I feel like what you're getting at is that it's like mixing all those elements of all those bands in one place, and you would never find that in 1982.
No,
and that's really the reason why I didn't give this a 1 for true. I'm kind of saying you're mixing things this much, you're getting like a 2.5, but obviously still on the true side. I do want to make a note on the vocals, mostly in Portuguese, and alternate between a less melodic black thrash growl and a charming, kind of off-key queer vocal, which also reminds me of Bathory. And I mentioned the Iberian feel. I'm not very versed in Iberian Spanish Portuguese music of the peninsula, but I feel like there's a strong influence on both kind of the vocals and on some of just the musical choices that they made. Did you pick that up at all?
Yeah. It's definitely there. Of course, the only Iberian band I ever knew of is Moonspell, so I can't really speak my knowledge in Iberian.
We've encountered many Spanish bands.
Oh well, yeah, I guess Spanish, but Portuguese though, specifically Portuguese. I'm not really sure. I could just think of Moonspell. That's all I could really think of off the top of my head, which is very different from this, obviously.
Okay.
It's not even remotely the same as this.
But I will say, even though I gave them a 2.5 for true, these guys, you can just tell listening to this, they have true hearts of metal.
Yes,
so in their souls, they are one for true.
Mm-hmm.
So,
absolutely.
important note. Second scale, the scale of terror, sonic terror to distorted pop. We're going to say this is a 3. We're right in the middle. We don't know what we are. Are we terrifying? Are we pop? We weren't sure, because there's definitely, mean, fast, black thrash riffs, but they never approach, like, insanity speed levels, and they're definitely not on the entire album. And even at their meanest and roughest, this band is still interested in writing real songs with melodies and hooks and structures and sing-along parts. On the other hand, what might, make you think this is more on the terror end is, again, like, yeah, that black thrash existing on the album, but also kind of the production and loose recording quality could make it less approachable for some people, and the flat, clear vocal could be a problem for others. So you got to be into kind of like a loose necro kind of production. You got to be okay with that.
Yeah, I'm more on team distorted pop for this. If we have to go either way, I would go more on that end. For me, the only thing that makes this marginally sonically terrifying is maybe the lack of vocal precision and the aggressive, more punk rock roughness of his voice. Something more of a primitive sound. But I just think that voice, what he's doing there, actually works really well for the overall sound. The recording quality and everything, the whole era of it. I think that works so well for what he's doing. I guess you can always substitute his voice for one of those more of like waily kind of speed metal vocalists.
I mean, I personally think it's fine. Like, I can be very picky with a clear vocal when they're flat, because I do think a lot of clear vocalists on these heavy metal bands that are like formed by a guitar player and the vocalist is just like an afterthought, and they're just kind of bad. I don't like that, but I like what he's doing on this record. I think it's fine. Like, I think if there was a very operatic vocalist on here, it would not work. Like someone with a really strong voice, like with this kind of necro feel to it, like it's good. Like the flat vocal fits, I think, and it's not done so badly that I'm like, this is terrible. It's fine. I find it charming.
It has an accuracy to it, but it's a strong voice though. Even though it's good, the inaccuracy is just it works well with this music. Just it's hard to explain, but if you heard it, you'd be like, oh, I get it.
Like, I feel like on this kind of music, if you hit every note, like, you're like a nerd.
Yeah, right? Like, it works so well.
This is a cool guy. He's going to be flat sometimes.
Yeah, it works. It just sounds good. It's a weird magic to explain.
Yeah.
Otherwise, the only thing that triggers my sonic terror sense is somewhat the vocals. I mean, the music, isn't harming my ears at all in any way. So anyway, so Fisher Price versus High Production. Now, if you're listening to this album, you probably want to put this more, as they say, necro, or as we call it, the Here Miles Metal podcast, Fisher Price. It's the same thing. I give it a 2. And I don't, some people might want to be like, oh, that should be lower. No, I don't think it's that Fisher Price. So, and hear me out here. Despite the primitive, era, that they're trying to recreate, that primitive sound, the recording quality is basic. It's not bad. But without it, like, this album would have so much less character if this were done in like super high production. It just wouldn't be anything. Like, you wouldn't even notice it, I think. The vocals, like I said before, the vocals are a little more closer to punk rock than metal for a few of the tracks. The vocals seem also, like, mix-wise, I'd say the vocals are mixed way higher than the rest of the instruments, with, a lot of reverb. But the overall instrument mix, seems pretty level, and it seems to be based on drums and guitar, pretty much at an equal level. And I don't know if there's a bass in there. Like, maybe there isn't. Would we have 3 members? I don't know. Maybe there is. Maybe there isn't. Who knows? There probably is, but it's not. Doesn't seem that important though. It's not making or breaking this album. No offense to the bass player if he's out there.
He's also the vocalist.
Okay, so there you go. He doesn't have a loud sound, but who cares? This isn't bass music. The final question is, this is what I always ask when I hear albums that are trying to sound like something old. Now, did they go out of their way to produce this album with such a nostalgic and genuine sound? And yes, it is genuine. Or was this the result of a lack of recording budget or effort? that is my question. Comment down below if you're listening and you can answer that. Did you like spend more money to get it to sound like this, or did you just be like, this is how it sounds? Like that's always what I'm always so curious about. So.
All right, our next scale where we count the notes, not enough to too many. We're gonna say like a 3.5. So just like a little bit. Like if a 3 is like the correct amount of notes, 3.5 is like we're doing a little bit extra, a little bit more than we need to. What stood out to me was the guitars. There's some very nice, very melodic, beautiful, composed guitar solos on here, which you don't find a lot in black thrash. They're very more speed metal, heavy metal kind of solos. What do you think, Malin?
Yeah, despite the basic recording quality, the musical complexity is quite high. These guys know how to play. They're playing very well. This is a collection of songs full of clever chord structures that match that kind of music. They're they're playing all the right chords that make you think of that music that seem right. Melodies and just guitar solos that are also well done. You're not just making a bunch of noise here. Also, despite the vocals being a little rough at times, as we keep talking about, he's still upholding legit melodies and harmonies here. He still knows what he's doing. It works. I think it's all just perfection. It really is.
Okay, the final scale of fun to focused. We're getting a 1.5 for fun. I don't speak Portuguese, but they seem to sing a lot about vampires, demons, and Satan. And because it's heavy metal, black thrash, it's kind of like party time Satan worship, and not like super serious black metal Satan time. I also find we've talked a lot about the kind of somewhat flat vocal. I find his vocal brings the fun score way up. I find it charming. I also find it very fun. I have a very particular also favorite moment, and it's a vocal moment. Track 6, Conde Dracula, in the chorus. Maybe we could play just a little stinger here. Yeah. As opposed to us trying to sing it. But I am not going to give them a total 1 for fun. I'm going to give them 1.5 just because they do have some moments of like genuine menace, genuine like evil sounds on here, evil riffs. And we're going to give them a little bit of credit for that.
Yeah, being that this is fun, think of yourself in, hanging out in the abandoned asylum back in like 1981, your friends drinking beer and worshiping Satan. That's the kind of music this is for, right? It's fun, you're going out to party with this and worship Satan in a place where you're not supposed to be. Hopefully the cops don't show up. But, this album has all the fixings of the late 70s and early 80s underground new wave British heavy metal speed kind of sound. If this album had been released back in that era, as I mentioned before, as it accurately captures, like I imagine, all your friends would probably be listening to Kill 'Em All and, Ace of Spades and Show No Mercy and things like that. All the big albums in the early 80s there, the very early 80s. And, and if you put this on, you were automatically like the most badass dude, the most brutal dude, in that abandoned asylum party if you came out with this. So, yeah, it's the ultimate, like, perfect party album for that atmosphere, I think. So, yeah, it's definitely fun for sure.
All right, let us look at the art.
All right, so this art.
And, of course, we do not have a credit.
Okay.
Perhaps we don't need one.
Yeah, that is a pentagram. This is a pentagram.
It's on fire.
That's on fire with lightning.
With lightning.
That's it, folks. That's just, I can't analyze. You know how we did the albums? We were getting into deep analysis.
It's not a deep album. It's not a deep album cover. I do like it, though. It does set the nice aesthetic tone.
Simple.
And I will say, when I mentioned that this is my first time I've listened to them, even though this is their 7th album, I did look at their album from 2022. But I think it didn't pass my album cover test. Like, I didn't think the cover, I thought the cover was too stupid looking. That's
how a lot of times, Samantha chooses these things. She looks at the cover. Hey,
well, look, I go through a lot of music. Sure. So, like, if the cover is like a set, like on the bottom, like of quality, and it doesn't look like they put any effort into it, I might just not even bother listening to it.
This looks like effort. It's just simple.
So this was a little bit higher effort, and so I listened to it.
Okay. I mean, it's simple. It's a simple concept.
That does go to show you my method of, sometimes not even listening to something if I think the album cover, the album art is just like it's too dumb or whatever.
Yeah, there's a fine line between dumb.
I am going to miss some music with that little rule I have, but it's saved me a lot of listening to bad music.
There's a fine line between dumb and interesting sometimes, though. It's a very fine line. And maybe,
It's not that they're dumb, it's just that they're bad. Like they're poorly done, like kind of like Photoshop art. But not in like a funny way.
Yeah, it's like low effort.
Just bad.
Yeah, it's just like kind of cringy.
Like the funny stuff I might listen to.
Yeah.
But yes.
So folks, if you want to,
this one was hit. I was like, all right, I kind of like the gloss over it. It's kind of like. And
it is glossy.
I liked the composition enough to try it out with skepticism, but then I was like, all right, the riffs are here.
Folks, if you want to get on the Herelies Metal podcast review, make an interesting album cover. That would probably help you.
A little bit of effort into the album. If you're not like a super famous band that everyone's going to be talking about, you got to put a little bit of effort into the art.
That's going to be the first step,
This is enough. This is enough.
Yeah, this got through. Like, you'll know when you see them. What will make you get that kind of feel of it. We have certain categories where we put album cover. We won't get into that right now.
I mean, I think that'd be very mean if I made a list of album covers. I didn't even listen to the music because of the album cover.
Yeah,
and that's actually a lot of music.
If we were to tell you how that works, it'd be very rude.
It would be very rude.
Tell you how we did that.
Yes. Not rude people.
Yeah, we're not going to get into that, and you guys figure it out for yourself. So you know, okay? The bands know, the bands that know. If you know, then you don't know, or something like that. Anyway, that's about it for this, right?
Yes. I also want to put in my theory of art. I feel like I'm also very good at predicting if I will like an album based on the cover. But I also kind of feel like if the band is so removed from the world of visual art that they can't even select the correct cover for their album, which you'd think would be a big deal. It's you're releasing an album.
Yeah.
It's not a single. It's not even an EP. It's an album. Like if you're not willing to put in that effort or you can't even recognize it, I do not think the music will be good.
Yeah, maybe you have someone do that for you.
If you're so removed from enjoying the aesthetic arts, like how can your music be good?
And I think that happens sometimes with bigger record labels. They might completely choose the art for you, and then you might be completely. Well,
that's not the realm.
That's not the realm we're doing. So I figure.
Sorry, this is total tangent.
Yeah.
But in conclusion, Red Eyes, a Chama Satânica, their 7th album. Sounds like I'm gonna have to catch up a little bit on Red Eyes because I really like this. I was very happy to find it immediately at the start of the year. And yeah, just really, really fun, really true. As I said, true hearts of metal. And this is for true metal hearts out there.
All right, folks. Thanks for listening. Thanks for listening. And make sure to hit that subscribe button, as they all say. And hit that thumbs up button so you know when this video out. And folks, thank you for putting us past 1,000. You guys did that. So that's nice. So thank you. Yeah, that means you're checking this thing out. It's good. So keep up at it, and we'll keep up at it. All right? Thank you. We'll see you with the next one. Goodbye.